All right. What up, brawlers? Welcome back to Throwin Hands. I'm Jakob Janoski. Alongside me is Daniel Woods. You already know how he's doing because we're shooting this video on the same day as the last one. So he's doing pretty good, as you guys know. So, fight night. Davidson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez. But we're going to review a couple fights before that. Alexandre Pretozia versus Askar Askarov. Two top 7 contenders, both vying for that title spot. So, what do you have for me on Askar Askarov?
Askar Askarov is a guy in this flyweight division that has beat some people. He knocked off Tim Elliott, who picked up a win earlier this week. He was one of back-to-back losses that Tim Elliott was coming off of going into that fight. But he's a submission guy, but his takedowns leave a lot to be desired. He's 4 for 18 career in takedowns in the UFC. He's got 3 wins by knockout, 7 by submission, so he can do it both ways in terms of finishes. It was a decision win that he picked up over Tim Elliott back in January. So once he gets guys to the ground, he's real good at tapping them out. It's just a matter of getting there. But he does have enough to do it on the feet. He's not super efficient as a striker at 48%, but he's landed 103 out of 213 significant strikes in the UFC. He's a guy with a lot of talent that I'm excited to see fight on Saturday.
Yeah, you make a good point that he's not too good at his wrestling abilities, but when he does get to the ground, he is fairly comfortable on his back, and he's not – it's hard to take him to the ground because his takedown defense is 66%, so he's pretty good on that front, and he gets 2 takedowns per 15 minutes on average, and he is a fairly decent striker. Yes, he's not as good as Pretozia, but he can hold himself against some of the best, especially with his ground ability always there. And for Pretozia, high guard, likes the pocket, and he throws a lot of volume. Yes, when you're in the flyweight division, you're not going to get much power, but he throws a lot of volume, and that's what his opponents really hate. He has a lot of forward movement. He has a diverse submission game also, which also keeps you kind of on your toes. And like I said, he can throw his hands too. So he has a very diverse game, and I think that reflects in his 22-4 record. What do you have to say?
I like Pretozia a lot. He's coming off of a win against Matt Schnell, which got him back on track after he dropped a fight to a guy that's in the main event tonight, Davidson Figueiredo. I like Pinto. I like what he brings. He's with American Top Team, who, again, a callback to our interview with Youssef Zalal. American Top Team, I mean, is absolute royalty in mixed martial arts, and he just joined up with them in 2019. So the ability to train with American Top Team for Alexandre Pantoja is massive. He won fight of the night against Davidson Figueiredo. He won performance of the night against Matt Schnell in his last fight. And he's a guy that can – I said this about Askarov too. He can do it both ways. And this is going to be an interesting fight for him because I think it's going to be a position where he can fight the way he wants to. These guys have equal reaches at 67 inches. And like you said, Pantoja loves to get up in the pocket. And with him not giving up anything in the reach department, he's going to be able to fight the way he wants to.
Yeah, you make a good point in him fighting the way he wants to. And on to keys for Pantoja, he does – I think he should keep it standing. He does have the advantage with Askar Askarov when it comes to striking, but he shouldn't be worried when he gets to the ground because he's also quite effective on the ground and uses ground as a backup, I guess, if he gets rocked by Askarov. What do you have to add to that?
I would agree with that. I like Pantoja when it stays on the feet in this fight. And again, we talked about Askarov. He can't get fights to the ground very often. He struggles with takedowns. So if you're Pantoja and you think you've got the advantage on the feet, why would you put Askarov in a position to do what he does best when he can't get himself there? So keep this fight on the feet. Make Askarov fight in a phone booth with you if you're Pantoja. I think that's his best bet on the way to victory here.
All right. What are your keys for Askarov?
I think he's got to find a way to get it to the ground. He does enough on the feet. Like I said, he's a decent striker, but obviously he's going to be outclassed by somebody like Pantoja, who's got a decent bit of power along with his precision, in this division, particularly at a lighter weight. To have a guy like Pantoja, who let me pull up his fight records again. Yeah, he's got 8 knockouts as a flyweight. That's pretty impressive. For Oscarov, get it to the ground. Again, he struggles with takedowns. He's 4 for 18 on takedown attempts, so he throws a lot of them out there, but it's not often that he's successful with those. So if you can get it to the ground and try to submit Alexander Pantoja, I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. And I think with a guy like Pantoja, he brings a lot of volume, like I had mentioned before. And so Askarov really needs to use his ground game to just eliminate the possibility of Pantoja bringing a lot of volume, especially when he gets up against the fence. So I think that's the best route of strategy for Askarov is get him up. Don't get put up against the fence and bring him to the ground. So what are your predictions for this fight?
I'm going to take Pantoja. I think he's definitely going to be able to handle business. I'll take him in a decision.
I'm saying the same thing. I don't think anyone will get knocked out here because it is the flyweight division. Not that Pantoja can't knock anybody out. He knocked me out quite quick, but he can. I think with the way the flyweight division is and how they're so light and not too much power, Pantoja will win by decision. So, next fight that we're going to be talking about, Hermansson versus Gastelum. I'm excited for this fight. This could be a co-main event on pretty much any fight card. So, what's your thoughts on Hermansson?
A lot of power in his hands. He's got a long history in mixed martial arts. He fought a couple times for Bellator in their early days. He spent a lot of time in Cage Warriors, and then he's been with the UFC since 2016. He's picked up 3 of his 5 career losses have come in the UFC, including his last one, which was a loss to Jared Cannonier. I think we can agree with the trajectory Jared Cannonier has been on in the last couple years. That's by no means a bad loss for Hermansson. But he's got 11 knockouts. That's kind of his calling card. But that's not all he does. He's got 5 submission wins. He had back-to-back wins by guillotine choke in 2018 and 19 against Gerald Mearshart and David Branch. So he can definitely handle himself when it goes to the ground. And the fact that he does have some guillotine chokes to his record is pretty impressive. As we heard Michael Bisping talking previously, that's really one of the hardest submissions that there is to lock in to make a calling card of yours. And the fact he's got multiple guillotine finishes is really encouraging as far as his ground game goes.
Yeah, I can't really add any more to that. He has a diverse way of finishing fights, decision, submission, and knockout. As we said, his feet is his best weapon. When he's on his feet, that's his best mode of fighting. And he has great hands, and he's long too for this division. He has a quick mass here, 6'6" inch reach. See, quick mass, guys, and he has a very long leg reach at 46.5 inches. So he can definitely keep his distance while delivering powerful leg kicks. So this guy has a lot to bring to the table. And on to Kelvin Gastelum. This dude can do pretty much anything. He's pretty well versed. His striking isn't too refined, but he has a very good ground game. He was a wrestler in college for a year, and then he just pretty much straight went to MMA, 10th place jiu-jitsu black belt, and great submission game, but he can knock you out, as we saw against Bisping a few years back. What do you have to add?
You summed it up perfectly. Again, Kelvin Gastelum has pretty much backgrounds in everything. He's boxed, he's wrestled, and like you said, he's a black belt in 10th planet jiu-jitsu. So he's a talented guy, and he's going to be looking for a win. He's coming off back-to-back losses. Of course, they were to Israel Adesanya and Darren Till, so those are by no means bad losses for Kelvin Gastelum. But still, he's going to be looking for a win. And I think he's a guy that, because he's so diverse, because he can do so many different things well, he meshes well with Jack Hermansson because they can square off and can kind of cancel each other out no matter where the fight goes. I think this is going to be really, really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So for the keys for Jack Hermansson, I think it's definitely best for him to keep it standing in this fight, use his reach, use his leg reach to keep Gastelum away so he doesn't get taken down. That's pretty much all I have for Hermansson. Obviously, avoid takedowns, and I forget who he fought. I was watching this fight earlier today, but he seemed somewhat comfortable against the fence. So if he gets backed up against the fence, I don't think that's the end of it for him. But Gastelum being such a high-level grappler and wrestler, that could be a problem. What do you have to add to that?
I don't have much more to add to that. Hermansson, I think his wrestling is a little underrated, probably. He wrestled for 11 years before he turned to MMA. So while his best bet is to stay on the feet, I think he could handle with Gastelum on the ground. I think he could roll with him some. But I think Gastelum will have the advantage when it goes to the floor. So Hermansson's best bet, stay on the feet. Like you said, use those leg kicks, keep Gastelum at a distance, and use that striking to kind of overpower him throughout the fight.
Yeah, his wrestling is underrated. He can grapple a little bit. So, what do you have for Gastelum? What are your keys for him for victory?
I don't think he has to take it to the ground, but I think he needs to get inside Jack Hermansson's pocket once the fight does stay on the feet, if it does. Because he does have a boxing background, whereas Hermansson definitely employs more of a kickboxing style, he's going to have to get in close. But I think Gastelum is aggressive enough to do that. So if he can be aggressive on the feet, make Hermansson fight in close, and then maybe score a takedown or two and control the fight once it goes there, that's the best bet for Gastelum to pick up a win here.
Yeah, I can't really add any more to that. And like we said, it doesn't matter how Gastelum negates Hermansson's leg reach or arm reach. He just has to do it. And I think he will do that as we get into our predictions. I've got Kelvin Gastelum by submission. What do you have?
I'm going to take Kelvin Gastelum. I think he wins this one by knockout.
All right. All right. So to the main event of the evening, the flyweight championship. This is currently vacant, as most of you probably know. And this is Joseph Benavidez's third time fighting for the UFC belt, as he fought Demetrius Johnson twice for the belt and once for the belt back in late February, I believe. So, and Davidson Figueiredo came in overweight. And this matchup pretty much decides the fate of the flyweight division if one of these guys doesn't make weight. Wouldn't you agree?
I would have to agree with that. I thought when Figueiredo came in overweight back in February, it was going to kill the division personally, because Henry Cejudo won the title, vacated it, and it has been vacant for a really long time. So it's just tough to watch a division that does have some talented fighters. I love Davison Figueiredo. I love Joseph Benavidez in the octagon, but it's just been a rough go of it for the division, because you had somebody in Henry Cejudo who you thought could be a mark. Well, you had Demetrius Johnson, first of all, who was so dominant. And then you have Henry Cejudo as the next champion, who is a marketable face, a guy who you can really push as a champion as you try to build the division. But then he relinquishes it to focus at bantamweight. So it's been a series of bad breaks when this flyweight division has had guys at the top that you can push and make into stars, because while Demetrius Johnson was so dominant, the quality of contender he was going up against was not great for a while. And then Cejudo knocks him off, and a few months later vacates the title. So it's just really, really tough, because this division has been strapped for talent and has been without a champion since December of 2019.
Yeah, you make a good point there. It's been vacant for about 7 months.
8 months now.
Yeah, almost 8 months now. So it's pretty important that these two guys come in at weight. Now, I've heard good things that Davison Figueiredo is lighter than he was at the same time around the last time he weighed in. So that's good news. So I expect these two guys to get down to weight. And I think, getting to the style of these guys, I think what do you have for me on Figueiredo?
Figueiredo, a classic Brazilian mix of styles for this guy. 9 knockouts, 6 submissions. So he's a capoeira guy, so definitely more of a striker than a grappler, but he can handle it on the ground as well. He's super talented, supremely talented. He's team alpha male, so he's working with, I guess you could say, the best team in the world, at least the most famous team in the world when it comes to small fighters. So just a guy that does a lot of things well. Again, he's gonna try to keep the fight on the feet, but he can certainly handle himself when it goes to the ground. His 2 fights ago against Tim Elliott, he pulled out a guillotine choke. He's got an arm triangle choke finish. He's got 4, guillotine chokes to his credit in his past. So he's a guy that can do it on the feet, do it on the ground. One of the more well-rounded fighters in the division.
Yeah, I think in all of the UFC in general, in my opinion, I mean, he has a very diverse history of submissions and knockouts. And as we saw with just Benavidez in the last fight back in February, he can bring you to the ground and he can knock you out or do both at the same time. So for Joseph Benavidez, his style is kind of different. He's more of a he can do a lot of stuff, but he's best on the feet. So high school wrestling, he does have a Muay Thai background, southpaw. He can submit, but he's also pretty creative. He can be a little bit creative with the strike. So I think that'll throw him Figueiredo off a little bit. What do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I like Benavidez as a fighter because he is so diverse. He's got a Muay Thai background. He boxed. He wrestled in high school. Was a state champion in the state of New Mexico, and really got his early training with Team Alpha Male once he really started focusing on MMA. So these guys do have similar backgrounds. Benavidez was with Alpha Male up until 2016, and Figueiredo didn't join up with them until 2018, so they didn't have any crossover. But Benavidez now with Extreme Couture, these are 2 guys that have some of the best trainers in the world, and they both are able to do it all. They're 2 really impressive guys. I really like watching either one of them fight, and I'm just hoping and praying that there are no issues with this fight because I don't want anything to make it a negative in my head when these 2 square off.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I can't really add any more to that. So I think for Figueiredo, his keys would be pretty much what last time, get it to the ground. I think Joseph Benavidez is a superior striker than Figueiredo in my opinion at least. And he uses reach that he has 3 inches to keep Benavidez away, keep him at bay, and then set up takedowns. What do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Figueiredo can handle himself on the feet against Benavidez, but I think he's also going to struggle with that to an extent. I think, like you said, he's going to be the superior fighter on the ground if it does go there. So I don't think Figueiredo has to take this fight to the ground, but he's had success on the ground against Benavidez before. So I don't see why you wouldn't do that in this fight.
Yeah, you make a good point. He can stand and throw with Benavidez. And speaking of Benavidez, that dude can stand and throw too. And I think the keys for this time was he was a little wild in the last fight against Figueiredo. From what I saw, his striking was pretty errant. And I think if he refines his striking and stays patient, like he was not like that in the first fight back 4 months ago. If he's 5 months ago, jeez. If he stays patient, he can pick his spots and maybe get the knockout against Figueiredo. What do you think?
I agree with that. He's going to be the better striker in this fight. I don't think he completely has to avoid going to the ground, but that would be the best bet for him. He's got, like I said, he's got a wrestling background, so he can handle himself down there. He has, I believe, 9 submission wins. He's actually submitted more guys than he's knocked out. But despite that, Figueiredo's the superior grappler. I don't think this fight will be defined by where it's fought, if it is on the ground or on the feet. But each guy will have an advantage depending on where that goes. This fight's going to be all about who controls the pace, who controls what happens, who controls the pace and who controls the octagon. Personally, in my opinion, these are 2 really talented guys. I think far and away the best flyweights on the planet. And I think this is really a coin flip for me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there too. This is a coin flip, and I think if Davis and Figueiredo, he got a little gassed out last time. He came into the octagon against Benavidez. He was huffing and puffing after that first round. If Davison doesn't gas himself out, I think he wins the fight, and I think he takes the belt by a knockout. What do you think?
I think you're onto something there. I'm going to take Davis and Figueiredo. I think he was impressive the first time these guys squared off, and I think he's going to be able to do that again. I think he takes a knockout this time.
All right, that I put that down. And so, do you have any final thoughts on what will be happening on Saturday?
Not a lot comes to mind. It's going to be a really good card. We've got a title fight in the main event of a fight night, which is always fun. So I think while the undercard may be, I wouldn't call it underwhelming, but not quite up to what we've seen recently in the UFC. This is going to be a good card. I think there's going to be some fireworks, even if there aren't a ton of big names.
Yeah, you make a good point there. I think, especially with the main card, yeah, there's not many names. There's still not even too many names that you might know on the main card, but flyweight's always exciting. Yes, they don't knock each other out, but there's always exchanges. And these two, the women's fight on the main card, I looked them up a little bit. It's a promising fight, and with two promising prospects. So if you want to tune into that fight, I would suggest doing that too. Daniel, thanks for coming back on, man. I always appreciate it.
Yes, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, and we shall see you guys you shall see Daniel for the review of this fight coming up very soon. You'll see an interview in that time too. So see you guys.